Welcome to Expanding Consciousness, everyone. My name is Gina, and I'm thrilled to welcome my guest today, Michael Schratt. Hi, Michael.
Good to see you, Gina. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Michael,
Mhm.
you are an esteemed military aerospace historian, and you have studied over 100,000 UFO cases, or as we say, UAP cases, and even USO cases, which might be something you wish to explain to us a little further.
Mhm.
You've been doing this for over how long? 28, 29 years, maybe longer?
Too many years to count anymore, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. What
Mhm.
originally inspired you to get into this? Because you are one of the world's best at what you do. And, you're preserving and going through all these cases and going through the ones that, and, clarifying what's genuine and what's not. What keeps you
Mhm.
going and what got you into this in the first place?
Mm, I guess it all started with my dad taking me to an air museum when I was 6 years old, very early on. It was called the Victory Air Museum, and it's outside of Chicagoland area. It was nothing more than an empty field way out in the middle of nowhere. And so they had these old World War II warbirds just parked outside, and the sun was setting, and you could see that these warbirds were sitting there a long time because the weeds were growing up through the wheel wells. The paint was faded and chipped and cracked, and the windshield had broken parts on it. They were cracked. All of the fabric flight controls were rotted away. And these old birds just had this appeal to me. That's what started my interest in aviation, and it's never stopped since then.
Wow. Okay. And then how did
Mhm.
you go from admiring these beautiful man-made craft to actually starting to explore UFOs, UAPs, and USOs?
Well, living in Chicago, I was only about 3 hours from Oshkosh, Wisconsin. In fact, they actually have the AirVenture air show going on right now as we speak. It's the world's largest air show. So went to that show for probably 25 years straight. And then, one thing just led to the other. I started looking at the more advanced aircraft and the classified aircraft and the stealth aircraft and the aircraft that are hidden within black budgets. And I wanted to find out what type of black budget aircraft were out there, things that were way beyond the SR-71, things that could go beyond Mach 5, other craft that didn't use conventional propulsion systems like electrogravitics. It might be a magneto-hydrodynamic propulsion system. Those are the kind of aircraft that I was really interested in. That kind of led me over to the UFO cases. And then that led me into the Leonard Stringfield UFO crash retrieval cases, which has essentially been my crusade the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, it
Mhm.
sounds fascinating. I have to just ask because sometimes when I hop on a plane as a passenger, I go
Yeah.
through the whole process of like, gosh, this feels so primal, so basic, so slow because there's an awareness of other technologies that we could be utilizing right now. And I
Mhm.
know that you're a private pilot, and this is why your work is just so grounded with so much intelligence behind it because you understand the engineering and the technologies that are involved in flying and how to fly. But when you fly a man-made craft, how do you feel? I mean, do you get that same sense of like, gosh, I wish our technologies were just more advanced or you had access to fly the ones that we have?
I feel the exact same way you do. Absolutely the exact same way you do. I feel like this is dinosaur technology. This is obsolete technology. It's the way of the dodo bird. We are not flying any faster now than we were when the 747 was introduced back in 1969. We're not flying any faster now. In point of fact, we're flying even slower now, because when you fly slower, you don't use as much fuel. There's not as much fuel burn. And the airlines are real big on conserving fuel. So in point of fact, we're flying slower now. Why? Why is aerospace in the commercial field backwards and going behind where we should be when we should be going Mach 3, Mach 4? If you want to take it back to the Oriental Express, that's almost Mach 30. We were supposed to be able to get from Los Angeles to Japan, Tokyo in a matter of 3 hours. That's what was supposed to happen. It hasn't happened. But in the black world, they do have the technology.
Now let's get into that because that sounds super fascinating. So, if anyone
Mhm.
is new to the subject, first of all, UFOs, UAPs, USOs. they exist, right? But this is not a
Sure.
conversation around doubting any of that. Okay.
Mhm.
And you, more than anyone else that I know, knows a lot about the black operations and about what our technologies are here on Earth. So, would you like to talk to us a little bit about where we're at right now with the current technology, and then maybe we can have a little discussion around, what was around even pre-1900, and maybe a little talk through the decades about what kind of craft there were, because they're all a little bit unique. They change over time, both man-made technologies as well as genuine off-world technologies. They keep evolving, and there are sort of themes and similarities as we go through time, through the decades. Um,
Sure. So go ahead.
yeah, so where are we at now? Like you say, 3 hours. So we're
Mhm.
not, that's not something running on petrol, right? So where are we with the
Mhm.
technologies? Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can go to your local airport, your local air show, and what you see here is essentially obsolete dinosaur technology. It really is. I mean, there's no way that the technology has not advanced in the last 50 years. We're still flying subsonic across the ocean, and it's just you're sitting back in your seat and you're eating your dinner and your water, your wine, and why are we chugging along at 500 miles an hour? It just seems so arcane. I want to give you a point in fact. In 1964, AIAA, they produced a paper talking about how to suppress the sonic boom footprint. And Northrop figured out how to massage the air molecules in front of an aircraft, thereby reducing the drag coefficient and reducing the sonic boom footprint to almost nothing. So we had this back in 1964. It's not being employed on commercial airliners. So the whole concept of the Concorde making sonic booms, they could have implemented that technology on the Concorde 50 years ago, but they didn't do it. So we were forced to just board these slow, obsolete airliners that don't get us where we need to go. Now, getting back to the technology where we are now, former head of Lockheed Skunk Works, Ben Rich, he took over from the Skunk Works from Kelly Johnson. He told my good friend Jim Goodall, this is a direct quote. He said, Jim, we have things in the Nevada desert that are 50 years beyond what you can comprehend. If you've seen it on Star Wars or Star Trek, we've been there, done that, or decided it wasn't worth the effort. This is a direct quote.
Wow.
So if you extrapolate what that means, 50 years beyond what you can comprehend, anything you've seen on Star Trek or Star Wars, we've been there, we've done that, or we decided it wasn't worth the effort. It's unbelievable the level of technology they've got.
Mm.
We're not talking about uh, gas-powered planes. Now we're talking a whole different level of physics. These are the kind of aircraft that don't conform to conventional Newtonian physics. You have to remove Newtonian physics and think along the lines of quantum physics.
Mm.
That's what Ben was referring to.
Mm. That is amazing. And you
Mhm.
know, I don't know a single human being on this planet that doesn't want that technology. So it's obviously being hidden for
Sure.
a reason. And I think
Right.
about, like, I live in Wellington City in New Zealand, and we have an international airport like many cities do. But I know
Mhm.
people that live near that airport day and night have to put up with the noise of the airport.
Right.
And then it takes hours, if not days, for us as New Zealanders, at the bottom of the world, to travel anywhere else in the globe. So,
Yeah.
and this is the same for many people. And we're using this dinosaur, gas.
Yes,
So
we are.
there doesn't seem to be any disadvantage for the human population to actually accept and have the new technology that is available. So why don't we have it?
Okay, a couple of reasons. Number one is he who controls the high ground controls the battlefield. That's number one. So they are going to keep a lot of those silver bullets, they call them. That's the in-house terminology. They're going to keep that technology under wraps. And number two, they know that if they release the propulsion systems associated with these vehicles, that it will absolutely doom and decimate the utilities industries. So you're talking about multi-trillion dollar industries. You've got the coal fire plants, you've got the nuclear power plants, you've got the solar farms, you've got the wind generators. All of that could literally be obsolete overnight if they were to release this technology. So they won't. And so we are the ones who are paying for this. living
Mm.
in this dinosaur backwards world when we could be ascending to a much higher world. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. And even when we talk about energy, like I mentioned before, when I like am a passenger on a plane, my feelings around that, it's the same around energy. Even though a lot of people feel like solar and wind and all the rest of it are kind of like new and clean and the most efficient way to go,
Hmm.
it still isn't. Because when you start to explore how UAPs are currently designed and made, both
Hmm.
man-made and off-world ones, their technologies, it's basically free energy, isn't it? And we know how to go anti-gravitational and we know how to all the rest of it. Do you want to sort of talk about what is the latest kind of technology that you feel uh, exists within man-made UAPs? Like as an example, a craft can travel, as you said, 3 hours, but how does it get there? Like it's silent and does it use any type of fuel or is it completely free energy?
Well, you were you were talking about anti-gravity. So if you go back to the newspaper clippings, 1953, 1954, they are completely full of references about cracking the gravity barrier. They were desperately trying to crack the gravity barrier. There were defense contractors, there were universities doing this. For example, Bell Aircraft Corporation, Sperry Rand Corporation, John Lear's father, William Lear, inventor of the Learjet, he was involved in this. Martin Aircraft Company was involved in this to the highest degree. All these defense contractors were literally spending, if you take the combined total, billions of dollars trying to crack the gravity barrier. And we know this because the whole concept of UFOs, UFO propulsion, UFO crash retrievals was classified higher than the atomic bomb during World War II. It was classified above top secret. That's where Timothy Good got the name of his book, Above Top Secret. That's where that comes from.
Mm, interesting. Has have we developed this our man-made UAPs based solely on crash retrievals, or from your knowledge, do we have extraterrestrials here helping men, the human race actually develop these themselves, or is it done more against the extraterrestrials' will, as in their craft being shot down and just retrievals and us reverse engineering? Like, how do we start developing the technologies that we have?
Well, first thing we want to do is we never want to underestimate the ingenuity of the human mind. That's
Mm,
the very first thing we want to pay respects to the men and women who worked on these programs.
mm,
And yes, there is a percentage of these things that should be kept secret. Absolutely. Like the atomic launch codes, communications with our war fighters. That stuff we don't need to know. We don't
mm,
need to know that. That's not going to change our lives. So that should be kept under wraps.
mm.
However, when it comes to the black programs that could change the trajectory of the entire world, those things need to be handed down to the scientific community as a united coalition, and then that kind of information needs to come out. But getting back to your question, we talked about the newspaper clippings. It is very clear that right around October 1954, they made a breakthrough. They absolutely made a breakthrough. And talking about ingenuity, the predecessor and the prototype for the F-117 stealth fighter was called Have Blue by Lockheed. That first flew back in 1977. The first flight of the F-117 was back in 1981. It was not acknowledged to the general public until 1988. So for well over 10 years, that stealth program was kept under wraps. And they have much more deep black programs that are still kept under wraps, even going back to the Reagan administration. There are a number of aircraft programs that were procured, designed, and built under Ronald Reagan that have not been declassified to this day. So that's the one thing. The other thing is we cannot deny the reports from Leonard Stringfield about the crash retrievals. There's 119 reports. If we link that up with the 104 that Ryan Wood had identified, we put these two together. Now we've got a lot of firepower. Not all of these witnesses are lying to us. There's no way. All we need is one to be authentic. So if we take that information and we factor in the black budgets that have been poured onto these USAT programs, unacknowledged special access programs over the last 80 years, it's clear that It's a two-pronged approach. We've got the man-made ingenuity, and then we've got things that we have assisted by looking at actual, original, authentic articles that may not be from here. And what we did is we built replicas based on the originals that are called alien reproduction vehicles.
Mm, mm. Do we have any technology that is man-made that extraterrestrials would think, oh, that's clever, and actually take on that? Because we always talk about, us, taking on extraterrestrial technology, but are we clever enough with our ingenuity to sort of have anything that the extraterrestrials would be like, oh, that's clever, we'll adopt that?
Very interesting question. I'm not completely sure, but one thing we do know is if you look at the research of T. Townsend Brown back in the 1930s, what he discovered is that if you have a capacitor plate, let's just use a phone. If you have a capacitor plate and you charge it to high voltage, it will move in the direction of the positive charge. And if you start stacking these capacitor plates up and you throw in 50 million volts on this thing, it's an exponential effect. There's a synergistic approach here. And what you can do is you can create an entire dish-shaped craft with the capacitor plates on the bottom, and that's exactly what they've done. This is a very simplified explanation, but this is
Mm,
what they've done. Mhm.
wow.
And it didn't require any alien intervention whatsoever. It's just good old-fashioned American ingenuity.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And the disc shape is a really common one that people have seen.
Mhm.
And I mean, maybe this is a good time to, if you could describe maybe what craft was like pre-1900, because, if people search on the internet, it's pretty common to find things, say, from the mid-19, like around 1950 onwards. It's a little bit harder, though, to come across, craft prior to that. So what's the earliest case you've come across?
Okay, good question. So we want to start at what people believe to be the modern date of ufology. So that would be June 24th, 1947, Kenneth Arnold sighting. I mean, everybody knows about that sighting. It's very well known. However, that is absolutely not the beginning of modern day ufology. We need to go back a couple of years to 43 and 44 when Allied B-17 pilots, Allied B-24 pilots, reported flying over the European theater during World War II, the Foo Fighters, these red orbs, these yellow orbs, these orange orbs would circle around the squadrons of the B-17s and B-24s. And then when they would get close, they'd all peel off. And we couldn't shoot them down. We weren't completely sure what they were. So that's 43, 44. Now, let's take it even further. We need to go back to the 1897 mystery airship wave. So right around that time frame over Sacramento, over you can call it San Francisco area, we had thousands of reports of these strange, you could call them Jules Verne flying craft. They had wings, they had gondolas, they had a tail. They had well-dressed inventor types with black top hats. There were dogs on the tops of these craft. They were lowering anchors down. There was laughter heard from these craft. And most of all, they had spotlights shining down onto the cities below. And this went on for, a couple of years, and then it just stopped like someone switched a light off. And what we believe is there was a German group called NIMSA that was funding something called the Sonora Aero Club. And they were covertly taking the gold from the gold fields of Northern California and shipping it to the East Coast. That's one of the theories that we believe. Now, this is going on for quite some time. They had advanced vehicles. They said that quote, they figured out how to negate gravity, is what they said. So this is 1897. However, let's keep on going back in time. We've got cases within the auto binder reports, 1856 over Oaxaca, Mexico, where hundreds of townspeople saw a orange-colored trumpet just hovering over the city for hours. And this is back in 1856. Now, if we keep going back in time to the Romans, 100 BC, we've got reliable reports from the Roman army talking about flying shields back in 100 BC.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, and when we go through indigenous cultures too, and even like cave paintings and hieroglyphs and things
Mhm.
like that, there's often symbology of
That's
UFOs
right.
being here. Yeah, that's
That's
right.
right. Hmm.
Well, that sounds so fascinating. Just to clarify, the 1897 craft that you're talking about, like
Hmm.
shipping gold, like actually transporting gold or using gold in the craft, like was transporting it, was it?
No, just transporting gold. They
Yeah.
had something they called the soup, and Walter Bosley is the expert. He gets credit for cracking this, and he looked at Charles Delshaw, who is a member of the Sonora Aero Club, and this guy did beautiful paintings of the craft. We know what these things look like, and they used something very specific. It was like a ground up emerald type material that was used as the propulsion system for these vehicles. And some of the cross sections and technical drawings look a lot like the World War II Bell that the Germans were working on. So this technology dates back a lot earlier than we might think, because if you take it all the way back 1,000 years before the time of Christ, you've got the Vimanas from the ancient India Sanskrit text that talk about a rotating liquid mercury vortex engine.
Mm,
That appears to be the propulsion system that has gone through the tapestry of time.
mm, mm. Gosh, it is so fascinating. You know, in this day and age, one of the questions I get is someone will see something that they can't identify.
Mhm.
So in this, usually in the sky. Occasionally it happens in the ocean, but it's usually in the sky. And they're excited because,
Mhm.
they fully believe it's a sighting of something off-world, but they're unsure. So, they might send me a picture and say, what do I think? What do I feel about it? I really want people to be able to discern for themselves, what is a
Yeah.
genuine off-world craft and what is a man-made craft. Because in this discussion, if and just if this is the first time people have heard that there are such things as man-made technologies
Oh
that
yeah.
are just as good as many off-world craft, um, it's true. And there's what, probably hundreds, if not thousands, of different varieties now already made. So if an off-world craft comes and we compare that to a man-made one, what's the clear distinctions in 2025? What can we kind of see that
Mhm.
would tell us?
Sure. So just following up on what we talked about before, if you factor in the billions and now trillions of dollars that have been pumped into these programs, so let's just take the example of the 1933 UFO crash retrieval over in Italy that made its way to America that David Grush talks about. If that case is true, then we've been spending all this money since 1933 on these programs. We are going to get something for our money, and they have absolutely done it. Now, how do we tell the difference between a man-made UAP and authentic article, something absolutely not from around here? There's a couple of things that we should consider. Number one, is it tested on a Thursday night? That's number one. Thursday night. Why is Thursday important? Well, because Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's pre-flight. Thursday's the test flight. Friday's debrief. Saturday, Sunday, they're off. So Thursday makes all the sense in the world. That happened with the Phoenix Lights. That happened with the Hudson Valley Boomerang. And you can see that a lot of these sightings happened on a Thursday night. That's number one. Number two, the understructure of the vehicle. What are the witnesses telling us? Well, what they're telling us is they're seeing tubes, pipes, and cylinders on the bottom of these vehicles. They're seeing transparent panels, okay? They're seeing lights that go off in sequence. So the reds would go off, the blues would go off, the whites would go off, and then it would repeat the cycle. We're hearing reports from witnesses that say they heard a low frequency electrical humming noise, like a sewing machine or a transformer. We can take a look at CE2 effects, right? If you have some kind of a UFO that comes by you, and all of a sudden the hair on your arms and the hair on your chest area, the hair on your head sticks up and starts crackling, the whole localized field is engulfed in a static electrical charge. It could be we could be dealing with a man-made craft. Another and the most important of all, I've got so many cases now of these UFOs that have a big steel rod sticking out of it. And at the end of the rod, there's a sphere connected to it. That is a static electrical discharge sphere identical to a Wimshurst generator. If anyone sees that on a UFO, a UAP, it is one of ours, no question about
Okay, that's quite clear. Um, Although I do wonder about the static charge. I feel like that could still be quite confusing for some people
it. Mhm.
because highly intuitive people often say they get a feeling and sometimes their hair might stand on
Yeah,
end. And sometimes if people have been to genuine crop circles, they often say that they still feel an electromagnetic frequency
okay.
there. Is there a way of discerning that? Like, how do we know?
I don't deny that takes place. I don't deny that place takes place. Now, the only reason why I bring this up is because in 1967 in Northern California, we had a report of a 140-foot diameter dish-shaped craft that had what looked like conduit pipes dangling down from it that had frayed edges. And the witness who came out to see this thing, his whole body, every single hair on his body was standing up and crackling. This was not an ET craft. This is absolutely one of ours, and this is something that's reported over and over again. This static electrical charge. The other thing to think about too is if you smell a pungent odor of automobile battery acid, that's another one. That's
Okay.
another one telltale sign of it could be one of ours.
Yep. Yep. Cool. And I think that that kind of clarifies it a bit too, because as an intuitive, if I've sensed a craft or seen a craft, I will
Mhm.
get kind of like a goosebumpy feeling or a sensations through my body that intuitively allow me to know, oh, that feels genuine, what I'm seeing. And even if my hairs do stand up on the their ends, they don't crackle. Like crackle sounds like it's getting a little dangerous in terms of what we can physically handle. And I
Mhm.
know genuine craft, they're not really here to harm us. They're benevolent,
Correct.
and their technologies, as far as I'm aware, have never actually harmed a human being or played with their electromagnetic field that much that you'd get crackling off their hairs.
Mhm.
Mm,
One thing I didn't mention, being an eighth of a mile away or a quarter mile away, you won't be able to tell anything from that distance. It's got to
right.
be much closer. So if it's closer and you see one of the following, it's one of ours. Number one, seams and rivets, welds, entryway hatches, socket head cap screws, hex head cap screws, Zeus fasteners, things like that. If you see seams and rivets, it's a dead ringer for a man-made craft.
Mm,
Hmm.
yeah. Are there man-made craft that look just like orbs or kind of those energy blobs going through the sky, through our atmosphere? Do we have that kind of technology?
I believe we do. I
Yeah.
believe we do. If we go back to Ben's statement, where we 50 years beyond what you can comprehend, yeah. And anything that you see on Star Trek, we've already done it. Anything you can imagine, the Skunk Works has already done it. Yeah, it's a done deal. What has been done within the black world is absolutely amazing. We would be shocked to see just how far back we are. Now, I can't give you that exact number. I don't know. Is it the fifth element that we see in the movies? It could be. Is it a Star Trek level? It could be. Is it a Star Wars level? It could be. Are we 50 years behind? Are we 100 years behind? Are we 400 years behind? I don't put it beyond these guys. Bottom line is they are so far beyond what we see in our everyday lives, it's just beyond belief.
Mm. Knowing what you know and knowing how far along we truly are,
Right.
what keeps you going, knowing that so much gets suppressed? Do you have a
Mhm.
feeling within you or some type of knowing that we are going to get full disclosure of all this type of technology and black projects within the next couple of decades?
Good question. Number one, I just feel a desire to know what's really going on. As a concerned taxpayer, it's our First Amendment right to question authority. And I want to know what's been going on the last 50 years. What have they been doing? kind of we mentioned before, I don't mind if they keep some things secret. Other things that have been laying in a dark, dusty hangar somewhere in the Southwest that have been sitting there for 30 years, those things could be declassified with no threat to the national security. So that would kind of be the first thing. Now, the other thing that you were mentioning before is talking about disclosure. When we talk about disclosure, and the recent things going on in Washington, D.C., like the senators and congressmen, they have these open congressional hearings. The problem is it's two-pronged. Number one, they don't have a need to know. Number two, they don't have a high enough security clearance to be read in on these programs. So how can they release this information if they've never been clued in, if they've never been read in onto it? There's no way they can do it. So we keep on hitting this brick wall, and it just seems that these senators and congressmen, they just kicking the can down the road, and we're not getting any further anymore. So I think that the democratic process has failed us to this point. That's why it's up to people like you, people like me, people like star seeds, people who are empaths all around the world, coming together as a united coalition, identifying these legacy witness people, people who loaded craft onto 18-wheeler trailers and shipped them to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, doctors who performed autopsies, X-ray technicians who took the X-rays. These are the kind of firsthand people that we need to come forward who have firsthand knowledge in congressional hearings that are broadcast live around the world.
Yes, I agree. Do you, and as far as you know, these crash retrieval sites that are around the world, obviously, if
Mhm.
we knew where they were or had access to them, that would change the way we understand things today. There are obviously human beings, who are employed to work with these craft,
Sure.
military or above. Do you think more of those people are going to come out and reveal where these crash retrieval sites are? Do you feel like there's anything that is going on with their memory? I mean, we have all sorts of technologies. So is it a matter that if they leave that work, does their memory kind of get altered so they don't remember all the detail? Or, yeah, why is it that these people haven't spoken out beforehand? I mean, it's such an amazing part of our human history. So why,
Yes.
yeah, just curious.
Okay. Personally, I believe that a significant majority of what people are reporting as extraterrestrial UFOs are in point of fact our own deep black aircraft. Now, that might be an unpopular assessment. That's just my feeling at looking at this for 30 or so years or so. Just looking at what's been done in the black world, what's been done in the defense contractor level. We're talking about Lockheed Martin, we're talking about Raytheon, we're talking about Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, Northrop Grumman. What have these defense contractors been doing in the black world that we don't know about over the last 50 years? So that's the first thing. There is a significant percentage of these things that mimic the fit, form, and function of authentic ET vehicles to the point now where you can't tell the difference. It's so good now that you can't tell the difference. They are building these things on the atomic level, stacking atoms up. So there's no seams, there's no rivets, there's no weld marks. It looks like an actual ET vehicle. No one would ever know the difference. That's where we're at this point right now. And senators and congressmen in Washington, D.C., they have no need to know. They're not clued in with the defense contractors. We're talking about multi-trillion-dollar industry here. So that's the problem. People in Washington, D.C. have not been read into and don't have a high enough security clearance to access these programs.
That is so fascinating because, like you say, there's not a great need to know at a certain level and at our level. However, with the technologies now becoming so hard to discern between off-world and on-world, um, is there a motivation, do you think, about these black ops, like these craft that we see that are man-made?
Mhm.
We see them and sometimes they are so obvious, and I'm talking about like the Phoenix lights, or like they're over big cities, right? So it's not like just,
Mhm.
oh, one or two people see them out in the country or in the desert somewhere. It's like thousands of people see them. So I'm guessing that these people are intelligent enough to realize this, that lots of people will see the sightings, and that lots of people will start believing more that UFOs are real. So is there like a social psychological reason about why they would want the masses to believe that yes, UFOs and off-world technologies do exist by simply citing these man-made technologies? I mean, is there any kind of plot to that?
Well, let me, best way to answer that is what my good friend Bill Scott told me. Bill Scott used to be Rocky Mountain editor of Aviation Week Space Technology, and he'd been within these circles for probably 16 years, tracking down black budget programs. He looked into the F-117, the B-2 stealth bomber, all the black world. He had people in the government, he had people in the defense contractors, and so this high-level military brass, they're talking together. And whenever there's a UFO sighting, the next morning in the supermarket checkout, you'll see alien baby with politician or something. And you can see how they're muddying the waters. And what they want to do is they want to take our aircraft and paint them with the UFO brush because it's a beautiful way to hide their own deep black programs. So Bill Scott is talking to this high-level military brass, and he goes, let me get this straight. When you have a test flight of one of your aircraft, and it's seen by the public, what you'll do is you'll purposely circulate UFO stories to cover your own black programs. And the guy said, absolutely, we do that. And so Bill said, well, why would you do that? And he goes, it's been working for 50 years. Why would we stop now? And that's
Mm.
what he was told. That's what Bill Scott was told. And then Bill came back and said, wait a minute, hold up, stop right here. You're telling me that you actually paint our own aircraft with the UFO brush. We just kind of explain this away as a UFO, as a psychological warfare program to make everybody think that extraterrestrial UFOs are real because it's a great cover for our own black programs. Is that what you're saying we do? And why would you do such a thing? And this guy came back and said, to keep people like you from looking any further. That's what he told me.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
see, they don't want us looking into these black programs. They want us to believe that everything is ET. Now, again, we could be looking at 85% of what people report as extraterrestrial UFOs are actually our own aircraft. The other 15% represent the core of reality of this phenomenon. So they would rather have you believe in little green men than believe in our deep black classified programs. That's really the heart of the cover-up.
So that's fascinating. So I mean, but could it end up kind of flipping on them in terms of, okay, so if
Yeah,
that's their agenda,
it
and
could be.
then if 15% of, the sightings that we see are genuine. So,
Mhm.
more and more people are waking up to the fact that UFOs are real, whether or not it's a man-made craft they saw or an off-world one, they're still waking up to it. So more and more
Right.
we are with our hearts and heart coherence and through meditations and maybe CE5 practices connecting with off-world entities and craft. So will there become a flipping point where we actually start to communicate with off-world extraterrestrials so much so that the other people, like the black ops, can't keep hiding? Like, do you think it's going to start flipping on them?
That's a very good question. Every time the government thinks they got a handle on it, there's always a new ET sighting where they can't keep up with it. Like if you go back to 1951, Gordon Cooper with his squadron mate, his wingman, they were in an F-86 over East Germany, West Germany, and they were at a 65-degree angle trying to intercept these squadrons of disc-shaped craft with silver metallic domes on top. And there was no way they could do it because these things could zip around. They could go backwards, 90-degree left-hand turn. There's no way they could do it. So every time we try to get one up on these guys, there was no chance. So I agree with you. They could flip the script on us.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, let's hope that happens. That's what I hope anyway. I hope that,
Mhm.
our extraterrestrial and off-world friends kind of help us out in revealing these black operations as much as possible, and
Sure,
enlightening us. Yeah.
they've already proven that they can shut down our nuclear ICBM silos, right? 1960s timeframe, Malmstrom Air Force Base, where we had at least 12 missile silos shut down. Boeing engineers came back 2 weeks later, they investigated. They could find absolutely nothing wrong with the system. So
Mm,
whatever or whoever was responsible, it was by intent, it was by design, like telling us, don't tamper with nuclear weapons. We
mm.
can make this obsolete in a minute if we wanted to, so don't tamper with nuclear weapons.
Yeah, yeah. Just going a little bit more personal now, because you are a private pilot. Are you
Mhm.
someone that has seen craft while you've been flying?
Unfortunately, I have not had a sighting. Nope.
Hmm.
But see, I don't need to be to the promised land to believe in it. I don't need to look over that horizon onto that shining city on a hill. I've already been there because of looking at the data, looking
Mm,
at the newspaper clippings, looking at the sighting reports, looking at NICAP.org. I mean, if anyone listens to this broadcast and they or a member of their family is skeptical about this, and we should all be skeptical, I invite you to go to NICAP.org, go on the website, and you can click on Chronos, and they have all these UFO sightings broken down by year. We're talking about thousands of them. And you can look at the 1947 cases and the year 1952, where they had two huge flaps. We have case after case after case of military pilots coming into very close proximity of these silver metallic discs, and all the reports are there. In fact, in the early 1950s, specifically 1952, there was a standing order by the United States Air Force to our Air Force pilots to shoot these things down. And that went on. Eventually, they figured out, you know what, this is ridiculous. They rescinded the order, but they did have an order to shoot these things down. So this was real. And then they always say, well, Project Blue Book closed in 1969 and there's nothing to UFOs. If there's nothing to UFOs, then why were you sending our Air Force pilots up to try to intercept these things?
mm. So, on that note, when we shoot down craft, is it safe to say that if we are aware of that happening, so we're shooting down craft, is it always off-world craft, or do we have some unknown kind of country versus country, UAP technology kind of
Mhm.
war or thing going on where we would shoot down a craft from another country, or is it simply that if we're shooting it
See,
down, it's always off-world?
this is the part that the United States government doesn't want to talk about
Right.
because during those early 1950 years, we lost a number of pilots and we lost a number of aircraft, and they don't want to admit it because we were trying to intercept these things. We were trying to shoot these things down with conventional rockets. We weren't very successful, and we lost a lot of pilots and planes, and they don't want to admit to it. They don't want to talk about it. Now, getting back to what has been brought down, now we start getting into the scalar waves. We start talking about the directed energy weapons, how they're trying to shoot these things down to exploit the energy systems and the weapons advancement propulsion systems associated with these vehicles. That's where it starts getting more sinister. Mhm.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I've heard about them employing those technologies and
Yeah.
PSI operators and all sorts of things to
Mhm.
yeah. Um, Interesting. Now, one thing that we haven't kind of talked about yet is around USOs and what they are, because
Sure.
we talk about UAPs a lot. And so in terms of USOs, do you want to explain that a little bit?
So, we're talking about a multi-pronged phenomenon here. You've got man-made craft mimicking the form, fit, and function of extraterrestrial vehicles. You've got interdimensional craft, possibly. You've got craft that are from another time zone. That's another thing to consider about. Then you've got craft that are known as USOs, or unidentified submerged objects, and that represents 51% of the phenomenon. Anytime you hear about a UFO, there's usually always a water component to it. So the UFOs are attracted to military bases, they're attracted to large bodies of water, and they're attracted to power plants. For some reason, they're attracted to these three things. And at least 51% of these cases are USOs. So the book for that one is Uninvited Guests by Ivan T. Sanderson. This is another book that everybody should have. It's skeptical. because in that book, he's got official Navy reports of these dish-shaped craft coming out of the ocean going into space. And it doesn't matter what medium they go from. They can go from the atmosphere to the ocean and right back like it's no problem whatsoever. And there's like hundreds and hundreds of these US Navy reports in that book. You cannot walk away from that book thinking there's nothing to this because they're Navy reports. Other reports where they had Taiwanese fishing trawlers with big nets. And then when they brought the nets in, they had a 40-foot disc, silver disc caught within the nets. And then the US Navy comes up and steals it away. These things went on too.
Gosh,
Mhm.
okay. So are these USOs both man-made and off-world? Like they both exist?
Probably, I would think so, yes. But, getting back to the USOs, these things were tracked by our not only fleets above, but submarines below going like 240 knots back in 1967.
Wow.
I don't think we had the technology to do that back in 1967. Our submarines could not get anywhere near that kind of speed, but that's what was clocked, and that's talked about within Ivan T. Sanderson's book, Uninvited Guests.
Wow. That sounds
Oh,
so
Invisible Residence. That's what the name of the book. It's called Invisible Residence by Ivan T. Sanderson. Mhm.
okay. That sounds so deeply fascinating. And considering that our planet is, 70% water, I mean, gosh, the activity that would be going on there that we just have no idea about is, yeah, it's phenomenal. Yeah.
And that's
Um,
why it's the US Navy that's driving the cover-up, not the US Air Force. Early on, it was the US Navy in conjunction with the Atomic Energy Commission. These two entities were at the heart of the cover-up. So now we've got the US Navy, we've got Los Alamos, and we've got Lawrence Livermore Laboratories. They're definitely involved in this, no doubt.
So I have to ask, is the Bermuda Triangle a natural phenomenon, or is it something to do with the US Navy playing around with that, like maybe with USOs and kind of generating that frequency that creates things like that makes things disappear?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
I just don't know.
Yeah. Very
Mhm.
curious. Now, before you mention that we can have craft that can come from a different time zone and that can also be interdimensional, what's the difference between those two?
Okay, so it's my understanding if you go back to Roswell, July 2nd, 1947, there are some who claim that that craft was extratemporal, like from our future.
Wow.
It was advanced, but it wasn't so advanced. People who were there stated that this thing was extratemporal from our future because
Mm,
the interior had a couple of things. It had flat screen monitors and it had fiber optics on the inside. This is the escape pod because when the craft exploded over the Foster Ranch and rained down all the debris, the actual escape pod continued to head southeast bound until it lodged itself in a rocky area 35 miles north of Roswell. So when the 519th Bomb Group members got there, when they looked inside, they saw fiber optics, they saw flat screen monitors, and they saw hieroglyphic writing on the inside of this thing. And it was stated that this craft was extratemporal coming from our future.
mm, that's fascinating. That's really fascinating. Um, with what you know about craft that we've made, do we only use earth-based minerals and materials? Because every once in a while, I've heard people say that there's been off-world or unidentified minerals or materials or metals or some kind of elements or chemistry involved. But I'm wondering, do we as a human race understand all of our kind of minerals that are available to us, or are some of those hidden?
Well, I can't claim to be a nuclear physicist, so I can't tell you about all the elements they may be using, but for some of these craft, some of them, they use commercially available off-the-shelf components pre-existing within the aerospace industry. That is absolutely going on. And you factor in a couple billion here, a couple billion there. You've got machine shops all the way around the country, centrally located on the West Coast that can manufacture things. Most of these craft are built at Air Force Plant 42 in Palmdale, where they have a labs for much of the major defense contractors. Once the craft are completed, They are either flown covertly or transported by C5 Galaxy out to the test site in Nevada, Area 51, where they're test flown. That's basically, in a nutshell, how it goes down.
Mm. Okay, fascinating, cool. All right, Michael. Well, I'd like to know a little bit more about you. I want our audience to sort of understand that, well, they've already got a picture of how intelligent you are, how grounded you are, how meticulous you are with your cases. And I know that when you go through your cases, you are looking at every bit of detail to see, the kind of value of, like, is it someone sort of making up a case, or is it a genuine case? You go through a lot of
Right.
detail there. And you've been doing this for decades. Tell us about the reality of being involved in this project. It's obviously something within you that you were born to do, but what's it really like?
Well, the thing is, I'm not doing this for money or fame. I just do it because it's a crusade for me. And I want other people to know because we already paid for this stuff.
Mm,
Why should we pay for it again? We already paid for this. And we get back to the First Amendment right, our right to free speech. We have every right to question authority. We have every right. Every January, in Congress, they submit the budget for this next upcoming year. And people as taxpayers, you can walk right down to the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., and you can request something called the RD&E programs R1. That stands for Research, Development, Tests, and Evaluation R1. And in this document, they have one for the Air Force. They have one for the Navy. You can go through this boring document. They've got a program element number. They've got a code name, and they tell you how much they spent on the program. But when you start getting into the black programs, they give you the program element number, and then they give you this nondescript description like Bernie or Seek Clock, these crazy code names, and there's no amount of funding that's next to it. So that represents a black budget program that general public is not supposed to know about. So you take the total amount and you subtract the knowns, and what you're left with are the black budget programs. That's how you determine how much money was spent on it. We can kind of figure it out just by the gaps that are left in the budget. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to track these programs, see what we can find out. You'll never get there trying to break down the wall at Area 51, but you can come in through the back door. You can interview the engineers. You can interview the test pilots. You can get technical drawings based on witness testimony. These are the things we can kind of look at. Now, getting back to the other thing you were talking about is the problem we're running into is that when people who worked in the black world signed these NDAs and these unacknowledged special access programs, when they signed on to these programs that bypass the Congress, there's no congressional oversight and there's no public scrutiny. So what that means is by congressional law, they're null and void because they bypass the Congress, and you can't do that. So they are not bound by their national security oaths that they took because it was an illegal program from the get-go. And that's the loophole that we have right now. Witnesses are coming forward. We have legislation in place now for these other whistleblowers to come forward.
And is there enough safety for them now? Like, now that that loophole has sort of been discovered and there's a few more witnesses coming out, and hopefully heaps more will start coming out. Do they feel safe enough?
The problem is the black world is too deep. It's too
Mm.
trenched. It's just too deep. These programs circumvent congressional oversight and public scrutiny by such a large margin. I don't know if we can get there because this subject matter is no longer classified. It's proprietary because it's been sent to the defense contractors. So it's no longer even classified. It's so deeply wrapped up in black budget proprietary defense contractors. Politicians don't have a need to know. Our president doesn't have a need to know. And so, how are we going to get this stuff declassified if even the president can't get access to it?
Mm, Is there anything like ordinary civilians like myself and other, listeners to this, can we do anything?
The only thing we can do is come together as a united coalition, spread the word, track down more legacy witnesses who worked on stealth programs, who have firsthand knowledge of ET, UFO crash retrieval recovery operations. And if they are agreeable to come forward, nurture those relationships so that we can get more people coming forward as a united coalition. We can't just have one or two people come forward. We need dozens and dozens coming together as a group that could eventually, potentially take us to the bodies, the debris, and the craft. That is our final hope, because it is the final curtain call on crash retrievals. This is literally the final curtain call. It is now up to us to track down these legacy witnesses.
Mm, mm. Well, thanks so much, Michael. Just as we're starting to wrap up now, I ask many of my guests this question. If you could snap your fingers and have us as humanity wake up to a truth, what truth would that be?
The truth that history goes back a lot further than we realize. We are not alone in the universe. We have the technology to transform this whole world into something that we've always dreamed of. We don't have to have these coal fire plants, and we don't have to have these chemical burning fire plants and cars. And that is such an obsolete technology. It's being held back on us. And just kind of a closing thought. Gordon Cooper, Mercury 7 astronaut, he was good friends with a friend of mine, and he told this friend that, quote, "We are 100 years in back and behind where we should be right now. We are, that's the minimum number. That's just a round number. We're well over 100 years behind where we should be." And I can imagine, and I'm certainly you can imagine, a tremendous world with this new technology.
Totally. Yeah. And I think many of our listeners are aware of even just Nikola Tesla being around a century ago. If
Mhm.
we had only gone down
Right.
his path, we'd completely different humanity already. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for your time and your dedication to revealing the truth and your clarity on the subject. It is just remarkable, and your work really helps to illuminate a hidden chapter in our history. And so thank you so much for that. It is deeply appreciated.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Mhm.
Thank you. And if our listeners would like to find out more about you, is there a way they can do that?
Sure. Number one, I've got a YouTube channel, and it's just my name. Super easy. Michael Schratt. That's it. Number two, I've got a book. It's available on Amazon. It's called Dark Files, A Pictorial History of Lost, Forgotten, and Obscure UFO Encounters. And I have a recently updated new book that I played a major role in writing called Disclosure and Illustrated History. And those are the books. Mhm.
Wonderful. And I'll write those in the description and the comments as well. Thank you so much, Michael. Many blessings to you, and thank you for doing
Thanks
what
a
you
lot.
do. Thank you.
Mhm. Good. Yep.